You were taught that money naturally flows to the diligent, that patience and humility would be compensated if you simply kept your head down and stayed busy. But a quick scan of the world shows a different law at work altogether. The most exhausted people are rarely the most affluent, while decision-makers move capital, shape rules, and rewrite outcomes without blistered hands, because they mastered power rather than worshipped effort. To explore how control and perception quietly direct wealth far more than labor, subscribe to Dark Psychology Decoded to uncover the hidden strategies behind influence and leverage. They do not compete inside the system. They architect the system and invite others to compete within it. Wealth is less a paycheck for sweat than a dividend of leverage applied with precision when conditions align. Those who rise fast treat work as a lever, not a shrine, measuring influence and control instead of hours and exhaustion. This is not cynicism. It is political and economic realism that prizes effective action over comforting myths. Think of the terrain like a chessboard where pieces represent processes, roles and flows of attention, and the winners are those who learn the board, see 3 moves out and set traps where others see traffic. People who protect pawns without studying the positions become spectators to someone else's plan, while strategic minds place themselves at the junction where value travels in and out. They do not request opportunity. They manufacture it through ownership, distribution, and narrative control. When they look at a company, they read cash flow and optionality. When they scan a crowd, they see unmet demand and potential velocity. Emotion is a hidden tax that clouds timing and misprices risk. Strategy is exemption paperwork filed in advance. Effort scales linearly at best, but leverage multiplies outcomes because the right handle can move a boulder that 10 tired backs cannot. Budge one decisive choice made at the right moment can. Outweigh a year of unfocused labor because leverage converts timing into force and force into durable position. Financial tools, intellectual property, distribution channels, and social proof are all levers that amplify a small push into a large effect when attached to the correct fulcrum. A hammer swings only so fast, but borrowed capacity, systems, and rights can swing around the clock without adding another hour to your day. This is why the person who owns the process often eclipses the person who operates the process, even if the operator appears busier. Control of rights, code, or pipelines produces compounding advantages that wages alone cannot replicate. In the marketplace of results, the decisive outperform the deserving because outcomes reward structure, not sentiment. The question the fast-rising ask is not, how can I earn more? But where does value already flow and who authorizes its movement? They place themselves at intersections, payment rails, attention streams, logistics hubs, licensing gates, so that each transaction brushes past their toll booth. They do not simply catch waves. They seed swells through narrative and timing so demand rises to meet their prepared supply. Opportunity is less about luck than about assembling a stack of levers, capital, code, brand, distribution, and aligning them with a predictable current. Miss the current and you get friction. Meet it with leverage and you get acceleration. This mindset reframes work from a grind into an instrument, tuned to the rhythms of power rather than the reassurance of fairness. Calling this approach immoral confuses description with endorsement, because markets and states have always been governed by effectiveness before ideals, especially when stakes are high. Machiavelli stripped political fantasy from political practice, insisting rulers study what actually preserves stability rather than what flatters the conscience of spectators. In commerce, too, unblinking realism clarifies that money follows control of bottlenecks, preferences, and permissions, not merely long effort alone. The maker might see thousands. The owner of rights sees millions because royalties and licensing extend reach without additional sweat. The operator runs the machine. The strategist owns the factory, the inputs, and the story customers believe about both. Leverage is the quiet engine beneath those differences, turning one choice into recurring income while others repeat the same day for decades. Power rarely emerges from toil itself. It grows from understanding where to press, when to pause, and how to recruit tools, time, and talent you do not wholly pay for by the hour. The art is allocating pressure in the single spot where systems magnify it. Distribution over production, rights over tasks, brand over features. So your effort echoes. One timely license, partnership, or cleverly structured deal can reroute a river of value through your channel. It is not that the affluent work more. They work on different layers, protocols, policies, platforms, where rules and perceptions channel other people's labor toward their aims. Once wealth is understood as a byproduct of control, the chase ends and orchestration begins, transforming anxiety into design. You stop sprinting after cash and start arranging conditions that make money arrive as a consequence of alignment. Perception is not decoration. It is infrastructure because human behavior responds to what seems true as much as to what is true. The leaders who move markets are often those who control frames, names, stories, symbols that compress complexity into confidence and guide collective action. People buy narratives first and products second. They follow the feeling of certainty before they audit the spreadsheet. The firm that broadcasts conviction can outsell a quieter rival with superior engineering because confidence lowers perceived risk at the moment of choice. Perception management is not about deceit for its own sake. It is about sculpting the context that makes rational adoption easier for the audience you target. Master framing and you master demand. Master demand and you master distribution. Master distribution and revenue obeys. Moral language often grows loudest in safe rooms, yet the engine of history tends to remember outcomes and institutions more than the polite debates that preceded them. Machiavelli warned that rooting statecraft in abstract virtue leaves leaders unprepared for rivalry, betrayal, and the constant push and pull of interest groups. The calculative mind therefore wears virtue publicly to build trust while negotiating forcefully in private to secure durability. Charitable gestures can be both good deeds and strategic signals. To audiences, the visible act frames the brand even as the backstage deal sets the terms. Credibility is a commodity earnestly felt by the crowd, but deliberately manufactured by the few who steward narrative and delivery with discipline. Used wisely, this is not cruelty. It is awareness of how people decide under uncertainty and how institutions persist. Predictability is the weakness of the excessively scrupulous, because opponents can map and corner a player whose choices always bow to appearances. The strategist roots around rigidity by separating personal values from public signals, choosing the move that works while preserving a reputation that invites trust. Reputation is an asset to be managed like inventory, stocked, refreshed, and deployed to reduce friction across negotiations. Waiting for permission seeds the initiative, while acting within legal boundaries and apologizing if needed keeps momentum on your side. History upgrades yesterday's controversial founder into tomorrow's pillar, once results stabilize and benefits spread across stakeholders. Victory often recodes yesterday's tactics as today's wisdom, because institutions ratify what endures. Because people act on beliefs, power naturally flows to those who design what others believe about value, risk, and identity. Control of perception translates into control of behavior, which becomes control of outcomes because choices follow stories that feel safe or exciting. The modern economy rewards those who package competence and confidence, wrapping capability in signals of momentum and inevitability. Influencers, brands, and leaders trade in attention and trust, two currencies that can be minted through repeated, consistent cues across channels. A narrative embedded in community becomes self-fulfilling, drawing customers, partners, and talent into a shared script that lowers acquisition costs and heightens loyalty. This is why crafting your image is not vanity but logistics for demand. To put this into practice, identify a choke point where scarce permissions govern abundant need and earn or buy a position there through rights, relationships, or code. Pair that position with a simple story that makes adoption feel like alignment with the customer's self-image. Then broadcast it repetitively where your market already pays attention. Build or borrow distribution first. Newsletters, affiliates, marketplaces, APIs, so that when you release, the channel carries your offer farther than your budget could push alone. Use measured risk via leverage only when asymmetry is real. Limited downside, non-linear upside, defined stop loss on time and capital. Keep emotion outside the deal room. Use checklists, pre-commit rules, and postmortems to prevent grandstanding and hindsight bias. Over time, systems do the heavy lifting while you reserve effort for high-impact decisions. Do not confuse theater with fraud. The point is alignment, not manipulation for its own sake, because durable power requires satisfied counterparts who return willingly. Signal clearly, deliver consistently, and shape expectations so that each promise you make becomes slightly easier to keep than to doubt. Where possible, convert labor into rights, equity, licenses, subscriptions, so compounding replaces repetition. Use partners' infrastructure to extend reach while keeping control over the brand and the customer relationship. When you borrow resources, capital, audience, technology, respect the double-edged nature of leverage by capping exposure and modeling worst cases in advance. The goal is decisive advantage without fragility, not bravado in a rising tide. As your position strengthens, invest in perception moats that lower the cost of trust, transparent guarantees, public roadmaps, visible testimonials, and consistent tone under stress. These cues arm your buyers with reasons to defend their choice to others, transforming customers into ambassadors. Treat complaints as narrative material, not mere support tickets, because a resolved objection becomes proof of reliability when retold. Stage your releases, endorsements, and partnerships to create the feeling of inevitability, small wins that signal larger momentum. The more your audience believes the story of your ascent, the more their belief feeds the ascent itself. Belief is a flywheel, and your job is to keep nudging it with visible, credible signals. Resist the temptation to moralize your rival's speed. Study their structure instead, asking what they knew about timing, leverage, and framing that you missed. Take notes on their partnerships, their rights stack, and the bottlenecks they captured while you were perfecting features nobody noticed. In this way, your envy becomes a syllabus, and your next attempt becomes a machine aimed at junctions rather than at applause. There is no honor in stubbornly losing with purity when transparent. Lawful tactics would have preserved your mission and expanded your impact. The world is not obligated to pay you for effort. It pays for arranged outcomes that relieve someone else's pressure. Arrange the outcomes and the payments arrive as a side effect. Remember, the most scalable work you can do is the design of levers, documents, code, agreements, brands that act in your absence and reward you for coordination rather than constant presence. The faster you detach self-worth from hours and attach it to systems, the faster your calendar becomes a tool rather than a leash. Keep a running map of where attention, money, and permission are moving this quarter, then place intelligent bets where those rivers converge. Use modest, reversible experiments to test narratives before committing brand equity, saving your boldness for the launch that data already blesses. When in doubt, choose moves that increase your options tomorrow instead of squeezing a little extra yield today. Optionality is silent leverage that compounds quietly until a window opens and you are the only one with the keys. In a noisy age, quiet orchestration beats loud exertion because the scoreboard tallies control points, not decibels. The crowd admires authenticity but rewards clarity and confidence even more when they must choose quickly with incomplete information. So craft a narrative people can repeat without notes, anchor it in real advantages, and deliver steadily until the story becomes shorthand for a category. Pair that story with rights that keep paying while you sleep, and let measured leverage do the scaling. Your calendar cannot. Power cares little for vows and much for execution, which is why the impartial observer so often sides with those who planted the garden rather than those who argued about seeds. Plant wisely, water consistently, and own the irrigation. Most people crave to be recognized as their authentic selves, but the calculating mind aims for something more potent, not comprehension, but conviction. Because conviction outmuscles truth by bypassing proof and feeding on repetition until the echo becomes a chorus that drowns out doubt and dissolves debate in warm certainty. The craftsman of influence repeats an idea, a symbol, a silhouette until it brands the collective imagination. And once that stamp is set, arguments bounce off it like pebbles against armor. Since reality invites inspection while perception invites feeling, and feelings obey their own weather, moving fast, turning crowds, and crowning those who master the rhythm of attention with an aura that appears inevitable, as though it had always existed, when in fact it was deliberate from the first whisper to the final applause. A patient architecture of belief built to stand when facts wobble, because emotion does not ask for receipts. It only asks to feel right now. This is why the strategist treats sight as a function of hunger rather than optics, understanding that people look through their wants, not just their eyes. And that if you feed those wants, safety, status, direction, belonging, they will follow the hand that steadies their inner compass. Enter any room and decisions have already begun, long before words appear, because cadence, posture, stillness, and space tell a story that ears only catch later. And the shrewd player tunes these quiet signals the way a conductor tunes strings, choosing silence where others spill themselves, choosing measured tone where others beg to be validated, choosing a restrained smile where others leak anxiety. And in doing so, he crafts an outline that suggests more than it reveals, because a touch of mystery keeps curiosity alive, and curiosity, properly guided, matures into trust faster than confession ever could. Icons are often less authentic selves than engineered masks that fit cultural desires. This is not deceit so much as design, the deliberate shaping of an identity that answers the audience's ache, confidence for the uncertain, clarity for the lost, elevation for the overlooked. So the image becomes a mirror that flatters while it leads, and in that mirror, people find a bolder version of themselves. Brands, leaders, and public figures do this constantly, not merely to be seen but to be believed, creating distilled personas that carry the mood of courage, direction, and authority, then selling that distilled feeling back to those who seek it. And the calculating mind does not await applause as proof of worth. He projects worth until the surrounding world adapts its verdict, wearing self-assurance as armor, cultivating silence as a stage, and curating ambiguity as a magnet, because the unreadable is intriguing and the intriguing is persuasive. Within hierarchies of money and power, image is a lever that magnifies small pushes into big movements, letting a person gather loyalty without pleading, attract partners without chasing, and command regard without raising a voice. Perception creates momentum, and momentum invites shortcuts in judgment, which is why those who hold the frame avoid public quarrels, preferring redirection to argument, definition to defense, because the frame, once secured, decides what counts as sense. When struck, they shift the storyline. When doubted, they plant fresher narratives. When cornered by facts, they widen the lens, so new context changes the meaning of the facts. And since perception can pivot in a moment while reality plods, the one who shepherds attention often wins the round before the truth has laced its boots, reminding everyone that value is not only what something is, but what it seems to represent for those who choose it. Through framing, ordinary offerings can appear rare, middling results can wear the costume of excellence, and fleeting availability can feel permanent if tied to timeless symbols. The painter who speaks with poise about direction is read as visionary. The founder who narrates defeat as tuition is celebrated for resilience, and the strategist who names himself before critics find a name for him appears untouchable, because people lean toward reflections of hope, fear, and aspiration. And if you can reflect those emotions convincingly, echoing their private narratives while offering a future, trust arrives with its eyes half closed. To live by this principle is to mold the mirror itself, deciding angles and light not to swindle for vanity's sake, but to own the stage on which judgments form, turning the art of influence into an asset that outlasts a single payday and compounds like interest with each retold story. The shrewd builder treats value as a signal, crafting a presence that says, "Attach your aims here and your path shortens," positioning himself at junctions where paths cross, distribution, permissions, data, introductions, so that simply standing there creates pull. When demand meets a gatekeeper who is fair, fast, and useful, alliance forms naturally. But every alliance carries sunset clauses, written or unwritten, and the wise read the weather, holding close when synergy compounds and loosening when dependence creeps in. Attachment erodes leverage, and leverage is control's quiet engine. So leave before your exit is priced by someone else. Take what was meant to be exchanged, know-how, access, perspective, and keep moving. Because stasis invites bargaining from a weaker seat, and the one who bargains without options pays in dignity what he saves in coin. Networks run the world like hidden rivers under a city, feeding houses you never see but feeling in the taps. Map those channels and you find where to place a hand for outsized effect, since a thoughtful nudge at a choke point can change pressure across a town. In practice, this means learning who authorizes scarce resources and who converts attention into action, then offering reliable benefits to both sides so your presence becomes habit. Status economics lives here. The right association can recalibrate your perceived worth faster than 100 private triumphs, and one public mishap can thin your circle if your story lacks redundancy. That is why reputation must be engineered, not merely earned, delivered with consistency, protected with discretion, and strengthened by receipts that others can retell without effort. Because retellable proof is the scaffolding of credibility. If belief outruns truth in speed, then character must be built to survive the distance, or else the costume will eventually sag. The disciplined strategist does not rely on theatrics alone. He pairs clean delivery with real capacity, so that when skeptics test, The system holds. Talk sets the stage, but systems keep the lights on. Dependable processes, clear agreements, sane pace, and intelligent margins. You are crafting not a trick but a flywheel, where each promise kept makes the next sale easier. Each alliance honored makes the next partnership cheaper. Each proof of reliability increases the network's instinct to default to you. And this is how perception graduates into reality, by repeated contact with competence until doubt finds better things to do. Cultivate presence like a product. Posture, tone, tempo, and restraint are features, not accidents. Do not litter conversations with nervous clarifications. Let some questions hang and answer with steadily shrinking circles until the point is sharp. Learn the choreography of rooms, where to stand to be seen without crowding, when to yield space to make others step forward, how to use quiet to stretch attention. A single deliberate pause can be louder than a paragraph, and composure under pressure is a signal that charges interest on trust. Never confuse transparency with spilling. Clarity is a service. Oversharing is a leak. So share what strengthens your position and serves your audience, and keep the rest in reserve as optionality, because options are the private currency of the prepared. The method for shaping narratives is simple to describe and hard to master. Name what matters, claim what's missing, promise a bridge, and then keep crossing it in public. Give your audience a phrase they can repeat at dinner without embarrassment. Wrap it around a tangible action they can witness, and anchor it with a symbol that stands on its own. The symbol can be a guarantee, a signature move, a recurring ritual, or even a sound that cues anticipation. Repetition, discreetly varied, turns a motif into an identity. The moment people begin to echo you unprompted, you can lower effort because the network now carries your signal for free. And this is how influence compounds. By outsourcing distribution to the minds of those who benefit when you rise. When challenged, refuse to wrestle in mud. Redirect by widening the frame or narrowing the focus until the exchange happens on your terms. If facts are arrayed against you, seek the principle behind them and show how your path serves it better. If the tone turns hostile, slow your tempo and let their intensity exhaust itself against your calm. Do not defend what can be redefined, and do not explain what can be demonstrated. A carefully timed demonstration is a spear, silent in flight, noisy on impact. One crisp proof placed in the right moment erases paragraphs of suspicion, because people remember impressions more than explanations. And your job is not to win every point, but to own the scoreboard that decides which points matter. Utility-based alliances thrive on clear benefits and painless exits. Design both into every relationship, an easy way to start, obvious wins early, and clean off-ramps later. Name the horizon at the beginning, so parting ways does not feel like betrayal but completion. Rotate roles so no one becomes irreplaceable, including you, and document the handshake, so memories cannot be edited by convenience. Celebrate contributions in public to bank goodwill, but keep leverage in private so negotiations stay calm. And above all, avoid becoming someone's only plan. That kind of devotion flatters until it cages, and cages are expensive to escape. By staying valuable yet portable, you invite a steady flow of partners who see you as the low-friction path to their aims. Become the person whose presence upgrades the room's expected outcome. Arrive with clarity about the next helpful action. Bring information others can use immediately, and trade introductions that collapse timelines. The less you ask and the more you unlock, the more gravity you gain. Never confuse busyness with power. Power is the capacity to choose pace and direction while others hurry. This is why image matters. It tells the world where to place you before you speak. But power remains because you place yourself where choices are made. Cultivate both. The look that opens doors and the position that selects which doors get opened. Do this quietly, consistently, and your reputation will begin to travel faster than you, arriving early to soften resistance and collect interest on your behalf. Remember that scarcity, story, and status function like the primary colors of persuasion. Blend them differently for different audiences. Scarcity without story feels manipulative. Story without status feels naive. Status without scarcity feels ordinary. Weave all three into your launches and your alliances. Release less than expected. Show more than demanded, and let others discover the rest. Discovery tastes sweeter than delivery because it flatters the finder, turning them into advocates. In this way, perception becomes participatory. Your audience co-authors the myth of you, and myths cohere better than memos when pressure rises. In the end, influence is not about shouting truth from a hill. It is about composing the weather in which truths are felt, so that people move as if by instinct toward the outcome that sustains them and strengthens you. Treat belief as a system to be engineered, not a miracle to await. Align incentives, design signals, pace reveals, and maintain poise. Attach alliances where interests overlap today and detach before overlap turns to obligation. Cultivate an identity that satisfies the era's hunger while building capabilities that satisfy the test of time. Do this with discipline and restraint, and you will find that wealth follows influence. Influence follows perception, and perception follows design. Not because the world is kind, but because people are human, and humanity has always navigated by stars that someone first dared to draw.